It's time to experience the O on the Original Sports Podcast. Here's your host, Mark Maradei.
Hey, Original Sports Podcast with Mark Maradei, bringing you a very special guest today, Joey Myers. Joey is a former D1 baseball player, a best-selling author, and he's a hitting instructor. He's a guru, as you would. Joey, how's life treating you today?
Pretty good, Mark. Hey, thanks for having me on, brother, and taking the time.
I'm very excited to have you here. Man, let's talk Joey Myers. Let's talk the early years. Was baseball your passion growing up? Have you always been a baseball guy?
Oh, yeah. It goes all the way back to the 88 World Series. I was a big Oakland A's fan. Actually, the first favorite ball player was Don Mattingly. And he was my first baseball card. It's probably why he was my first favorite. Then it became Mark McGwire and the Oakland Athletics and the Bash Brothers. And I remember that horrible 1988 World Series where Kirk Gibson hit the floppy legged home run to end up beating us, right? And then after that, 89 had the Bay Area series, and that was all good. So since then, I was a big baseball fan. Started baseball probably about 7 years old. Had a couple really, really good little league years. And then once we moved from the small field, the small mound, 45 feet, to the big one, the 60-foot 6-inch, I had a little bit of trouble. I wish I could have gone back in time, worked with myself. We would have worked probably more of the timing elements of things. But at the time, I'm a big researcher. I'm a big critical thinker, and I dove into every mechanical book I could get my hands on. I read Tony Gwynn's book and Mike Schmidt's book and Ted Williams's book and Charlie Lau. And I went into all these books, and all great books, great information, but the information didn't really mesh. They all had something different to say on hitting, and it really screwed me up for probably about 4 years. So 7th grade through my sophomore year. And then I finally said, you know what, I'm done with the books. I'm just going to do based off of feel. And that's where I really came back into the game. Not like I didn't have all the power that I had back in Little League because I put up some video game numbers in Little League, but I started to come back a little bit more when I was back into the field. And then lucky that I was able to get a scholarship my last 2 years doing really well in high school, got a scholarship to play baseball at Fresno State, which when I wasn't there yet, I played from 2000 to 2003, but the 2008, I was long gone by then, but they won the World Series out there for those that remember that year.
That's great baseball out there. It really is. Were you a big kid in Little League that you were putting up video game numbers?
Video game numbers. So I am normally, on a good day, I'm about 5'10", 181 pounds, soaking wet. So that's what my normal now. But back then in Little League and in college, I was about the same weight, but much more muscle. And obviously same height, 5'9", 5'10". In Little League at the time, I think I was a taller kid, not big, not huge, but a little bit taller, but I wasn't by any means above everybody else. I was probably run of the mill, maybe slightly above average. But the mechanics of it, a couple of the videos, the instruction how-to videos that I had watched at that time, it was just I had a hitting instructor that we do a lesson like once every couple weeks or whatever. But that little bit that I had gotten, I had figured it out, and it's what I teach now, and it's what I didn't know. I was like ignorance on fire at the time, but whatever it was at the time, I didn't know, did really, really well the last 2 years. But and we'll get into this, I'm sure, a little bit more. It really has it's not a lot to do with size as in body mass. It has more to do with length of limbs. So legs, arms, it's more of like leverage in engineering type of principles.
You think that's pretty common across baseball at every position though? Because you look at some of the guys, you look at your pitchers. I mean, they want longer limb guys. Closer you get to the plate on that stride, the faster that ball's coming at you, less time you have to think about it. I remember when Cal played. What's Cal? Cal's like 6'4", 6'5". He was playing short, moved to third. The Pirates have a kid by the name of O'Neal Cruz. He's 6'7", playing shortstop. It's insane. Like
monster.
Yeah, my son and I went to see him play up in Altoona, PA. And I was like, holy crap, that is the biggest baseball player. And I've seen McGwire play in person, a lot of those guys, but he's just huge.
Judge and Stanton too.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I mean, those guys are massive. baseball players. I remember Frank Thomas. I remember seeing
Yeah.
Frank Thomas play in person, and I'm thinking to myself, holy crap, and then you
And
realize,
he was
okay,
meaty
he was
too.
a football player too.
He
So
was meaty too. Yeah, he was a big
yeah,
dude. Yeah, where
yeah,
Judge is a big dude, and
yeah,
Giancarlo Stanton too. But it's amazing they got these guys that are 6'7", 6'8", 6'9", that are playing. Remember Richie Sexton of
yeah,
the
absolutely.
Mariners back in the day? He was
Yeah,
like 6'9".
yep, yep. Usually a lot of them per se don't always pan out to have that superstar career. Like they may put up a couple great years. Would you agree on that?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and it depends. I think like King Griffey Jr., right, is another one that was 6'4", 6'5". He wasn't
Yeah,
6'7", but he was long on everything. I mean, he had that traditional, beautiful lefty, that Nike swoosh sign
yeah,
swing, and he had that barred out front arm, and he was away from the plate a little bit more. He wasn't in on the plate, and he had some great success. Unfortunately, the poor guy's Achilles heel was that injury that he had where he broke his wrist, and he just never was the same after that.
right.
But yeah, I think the longer the limb, the farther the ball goes. It's just a longer lever. Again, an engineering principle. The longer that lever is, the more the force gets multiplied at the end of it. So good example is you can look at Altuve and Judge, and I love that picture of, I can't remember who was on base, but they were standing next to each other,
Yeah,
right? And it
yep,
poor Altuve was about a third of Judge. He kind of came up to his hip, right?
yep,
And if you look at both of their swings, Altuve is really good at leveraging his front arm, like getting more barred out with the front
yep,
arm when he gets to the ball. Whereas Judge is almost the opposite. He gets more of a bend, more of a chicken wing bend in his front arm, especially when it comes to middle end pitches. And if you look at that, we say that when you bend the front arm, you're shortening your lever. And when you're lengthening your arm, you're lengthening your lever. And if you look at Altuve's arm, if you had both of them, with their arms straight out to the side and the wings, you looked at the wingspan, Altuve's probably half, if not 40% of what Judge is, but Judge is doing Altuve a favor by going into this more bend position and
sure,
shortening his lever, whereas Altuve is going fully out, where maybe Altuve might not be able to hit as many 115-mile-an-hour ball exit speeds off the bat, but Altuve can be above 100 miles an hour just with that longer arm. So the bigger guys that shorten their levers, I think, do a favor to the guys shorter that lengthen their levers.
That's an interesting concept. So let's go back to Fresno State. Anybody else come knocking at the door? Do you have any other opportunities?
No, so my journey, my journey at Fresno State it was fun. Got my school paid for, made a lot of really good relationships. Some of the guys we still talk now. I had probably one of the most legendary college baseball coaches to learn under, and that was Coach Bennett, he got inducted into the Baseball Coaches Hall of Fame back, I think, in 2013, retired back in 2002. So my junior year was his last year. And then the current coach that's there now was his first year and my last year. And so by the time the end of my career came, I had a tough time. More looking back now, the mechanics that I teach now, I was doing probably 20 to 30% of what I teach now. So I had no clue back then because we didn't have access to video like we do now, and all the different things, like different cool tech and gadgets and things like that.
Yeah.
And so what happened was my mechanics, I think, was partly the factor. I think part of it, I was a mental case. I think I was in my own head a lot of that last year.
Sure.
And things like that. But I ended up getting hit by the only time I ever broke a bone in all my career, my sporting athletic career. And I played soccer all the way up until my sophomore year in high school, from being young, baseball, all the way through college. I did martial arts for 3 years. And in my second to last game of the season, we were playing Rice. And Rice had some ballers. They had that year 3 of their starting pitchers, their Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night guys, or Friday, Saturday, Sunday starters, all got drafted within the first 5 rounds, or the first 5 overall, right? So 3 of their starters got drafted within the top 5 overall. So they had some ballers. So I got hit by their reliever at the time, Brad Aardsma. Brad Aardsma he bounced around the big leagues, played for the Mariners, played for Red Sox, I think, but at the time threw 94. And that was the only time I ever broke a bone. He threw one up and in, and I went this way. He ended up hitting that little chip in that bone that sticks out there, the ulna.
Yeah.
And I didn't know it at the time. I mean, it hurt like a bugger, but I get to first base, let off, and then he tried to pick over, and I slid in, and I moved my wrist a certain way. I was like, ooh, that didn't feel good. And so didn't think anything of it. When the outfield went to throw some balls, and I was like, oh yeah. So I couldn't rotate my wrist, and that's that little teeny bone. Amazing how that little teeny bone can cause so much damage. And so I put a forearm cast on me. I wasn't really being recruited, so that wasn't really. I mean, it could have stopped me from pushing the envelope and saying, you know what, I want to play some independent ball, and I could have made some phone calls. But that was almost like the nail in the coffin. I was like, I think I'm good. You know, I think that was God's way of telling me, all right, I think you had a good career. Now it's time to start jumping into the coaching side of things and giving your knowledge out to players.
In terms of the coaching, where'd you go from there? Did you go back to high school? Did you stay in college and do, grad assistant? What'd you do with coaching after that?
Good question. So I was pretty burned out of baseball at that time. So my wife and I, from the summers that I never got to travel really because baseball was all the travel, I had to be around wherever the baseball was. In the winter, you didn't really have much time to go anywhere. And my wife and I were dating at the time. We both wanted to study abroad, and we never had gotten a chance to do it. So we decided, since I was burnt out of baseball, to go to Italy.
Oh,
nice. It was a nice central area where there was really no baseball. There is baseball out there, but it is no baseball really.
Right.
And I just wanted to go somewhere where there wasn't any of that. And, soccer being the big thing out there. So it took me about a semester. We were 2004, the spring of 2004. It was right before, it was on the heels of them, or on the toes of them going to be doing the Winter Olympics in 2006. So we studied in Turin, Italy for the semester. And then when I got back, I was ready again on the baseball circuit, but on the coaching side. So I came back private. I worked for an academy, a hitting academy. And I did that for probably a whole spring, and found out that they were paying me $15 an hour and they were pocketing 45. So they were charging everybody 60 and I'm getting 15. I'm doing all the work. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to pass my cards out as the season starts winding down. And so that's what I did, and grabbed some clients over and just went private from there on out. I've coached a couple teams. I've helped some buddies who were teachers that were coaching as well. So I coached a couple junior high teams, a 7th grade, I think an 8th grade team, or maybe one just 7th grade team. I did some soccer early on, helped my dad coach my brother who's 6.5 years younger. So coaching's always been there in my life, but the private was so much better because I'm getting the kids that want to get better for the most part. And the parents are paying the money, and we could say, hey, if you're not putting your work in, then mom and dad's going to take their money and go. So it's a motivation for them to stay with it. So I always get to work with the top third of kids who want to get better.
What's the age group you like to work with the best? Because I've coached anywhere from 5 and 6 year olds to always up to, 20-year-olds, and we all have an age group that we hit it off with the best. What age group you like?
Yeah, I like them all. They have their own challenges, as you say, each age group. And what I've done recently is, because I went away from one-on-ones because I was really busy. So I'd be I had my online stuff for the hitting stuff from Monday through Friday. And then on the weekend, I was doing one-on-ones from 7:45 in the morning till 4 at night. And then I was coming back on Sunday, going from 9 to 2, doing all one-on-ones. And at the time we had our first child, and the wife was barking. I mean, I was tired by the time Sunday hit.
Absolutely.
And so what we did was we moved it into small private groups. So in the small private groups, the older kids are a little bit better in those groups. So right now I have probably about 40 or so weekly hitters that I text out. Not all of them can work on that weekend because some are going away to tournaments, or, some are out of town because of the summer and whatnot. But we have about 40, and I work 2 days, Thursday and Sunday, and we do groups from 2 to 6 in a group. Usually 5 to 6 in a group. I reserve for those that are pretty seasoned, been working with, but I don't take any that are younger than 11, and any, age-wise, it's all up from there. So I do have a hitting apprentice who I worked with. He just graduated high school. He's going to play at Porterville JUCO City College, which is in kind of Central California. I think more the east, going east. So I'm going to have to find another hitting apprentice, but I've been working with him since he was probably 8, 9, 10 years old, and just graduated. So he takes all the younger ones. So if a younger one comes in 7, 8, 9, 10, then I send them to him and he works with them.
Well, that's a
So
good deal.
I love the younger ones, but they just don't assimilate well into the groups. If they want to do a one-on-one, I charge more for that. But if they want to do one-on-one, that's probably a better fit for the younger ones.
Right.
But it's not really beneficial, I think, to do a one-on-one with me with the younger ones, just because they're paying more. They can pay my hitting apprentice a lot less to work with him one-on-one. They're getting pretty much the same information. They're just not getting me,
I like your philosophy of working with like 11 and older and in small groups, because this is kind of the way I teach. I feel like kids learn better from each other. We're going to go ahead and give the instruction, the philosophy. We're going to teach technique and fundamental, whatever we're teaching them. But I feel like them watching each other, them talking to each other, it helps them to go a whole nother level than anything we could possibly do with them, to be quite honest with you. That's just my mentality towards it. It sounds like that's where you are with yours.
Yeah, what's interesting, Mark, is that in the beginning when I was making the switch, because I had hitters that, like my hitting apprentice, that had been with me forever doing one-on-one, and that's all they knew.
Yeah.
And when we're switching to this small private group thing, they're all kind of and so it was in the beginning, it was a little growing pains for some of them, but they love it now. Like you said, they get, I think, more out of it. Of course, they don't get as much me time, but they get more of their buddies. So I try and put their buddies in the same group, because the older ones, the high school ones, they work together when they're buddies.
Sure.
Now the 7, 8, 9-year-olds, I put them together with their buddies, and they don't work really well together. It's hard to get anything done with them. So it's a little different on how you would do that. If you're going to do small private groups with the younger ones, you almost have to split them up, or have a group where you got buddy, you have 2 pairs of buddies, and then you change them, right? You have you switch them up to where the buddies aren't together. Right. But yeah, so the challenge was moving from the single person one-on-one to the groups, but they love it because it's competition. They get to see what some of their same age guys are hitting, ball exit speed, ball coming off the bat, and some of the measurements we do. So they get to measure up, and then we do some games, we do some different things. And so it's that competitive nature.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
much better in a group. Yeah.
Absolutely. You got to keep it competitive. If you wanted to share with people the top 2 hitting mistakes coaches and hitters make for the most part today, what are the top 2 mistakes you feel they make?
Good question. I would say probably the biggest one, and I've seen it kind of start to slow down, but it's always been something since I first started with all this, is over rotating. So the idea that the swing is all about rotation. So there's 2 camps that are out there. Some say, well, it's all linear. And then the other camp says it's all rotation, what the swing is. And it's a combination of both. So you need there's elements of linear and there's elements of rotation, but the reality of hitting, whether we're softball, baseball, is we have to hit it between 90 degrees. We have to hit it between the diamond, right? So we have to be able to optimize how our body turns. And so linear and rotational elements within that 90-degree space. And I'll give examples to my hitters, like bowlers, right? Bowlers, if you look at the Professional Bowling Association, you look at those professional ones, is that all of them almost look very similar in how they roll a bowling ball down the lane. And they're rolling a ball down a lane that's about, I think, 3 feet to 3.5 feet wide. So we're talking about 90 degrees of fair territory is what we're working with. Bowlers have this even smaller width to work with. And you see them kick their back leg out, and it kind of kicks behind them like they're a dancer, right? Yeah. And what that's doing is that's keeping their pelvis in line with where they're rolling the ball. And they're even putting a spin on it, right? Yeah. So it kind of bows out and then kind of comes in and hits the pins. So over rotation is probably the biggest one. And then the second one, I would say, as a mistake that I see. So over rotation. And then right now, more in progressive circles, I guess we can go into like the squishing the bug and all that, but that's all, I mean, that's 10 years ago. Were bad mistake things. But I think now a lot of hitters, a lot of progressive hitting coaches, or somewhat progressive, are teaching to get the barrel in the zone really, really early, keep it on the plane of the pitch for as long as possible, and to get it as far out as you can to stay on the plane. So they talk about a Nike swoosh sign. So if you can picture a Nike swoosh sign, so the barrel makes that move way back towards the catcher and then come in and stay on the plane all the way through. And what they'll say, their argument is, if they're late on the ball, well, they can hit a ball the other way because they're deep. And if they're early on the ball, if they're on time, they're on time. If they're early on the ball, then they got the barrel in the zone out there and they can pull it down the line. But in reality, if you watch major leaguers, especially the ones that are hitting 97 in, 100 in, and they're able to hit 100 away or 90, 80 miles an hour away, they're not doing that. It's not a long barrel path, barrel on the path. It's actually a strategic. There's a timing of when the barrel gets in the zone based on the depth of the pitch. So outer third, middle third, inner third. So what we find is, and we just split it up into two sections. So if you can imagine, there's 3 different catchers. We got one position where the real catcher is. So you imagine where that catcher's glove would be. You have one catcher positioned where the catcher's glove is in line with the hitter's back foot. So he's slightly forward towards the pitcher, right? And then you have a third catcher that is positioned where his glove or her glove is placed right in line with the hitter's belly button. So you have each catcher is more close to the pitcher, right? So what we do is with the balls middle away or middle down. So the farther the ball is away from the hitter, the more early we want the barrel in the zone. So we say we want the barrel to enter the zone anywhere between the real catcher's glove and the back foot catcher's glove. So as long as it's somewhere in there, and then their contact point's going to be slightly deeper than it would if the ball was closer to them. So then the opposite is true on middle in or middle up, which now instead of being deep and to the back foot, now we're going back foot to belly button. So, and this is what we find. You can look on video of guys like Trout, Andrew McCutchen, a fellow Pittsburgh Pirate back in the day. You can look at Mookie Betts, Altuve. You can look at all these guys. And when they're hitting 97, 95 plus inside, you're seeing that barrel stay up, 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 and then it drops into the zone later than early. So what happens that the second mistake being early and then staying on all the way, there's no way. And I haven't seen, somebody can show me video of this, but I've never seen a top level hitter enter the zone really early with the barrel on a 97 pitch in and be able to get to it without their bat breaking in their hands. I would love for somebody to show me that. So I would say over rotation, number one mechanic, and then kind of a more progressive mechanic for those progressive hitting coaches is when the barrel enters the zone.
That's going to be interesting because I'm going to watch my son play this evening, and I'm going to look for that and when he's dropping it in the zone, because he does have a guy that we work with not during the season, but out of season. Yep. And conceptually speaking, I want to see if that's something. I don't mess with it. Yes, I'm not a guru. I'm not a pro at that.
And your dad.
Yeah. You want to talk football, I can mess with it. I don't want to mess with the baseball swing. I just don't. I'm old in it, from my perspective of baseball. Yeah.
Your dad.
That's the bottom line. That's the bottom. If I gave you a month to train my kid and get him ready for a big tournament, where are you pigeonholing him to get him ready? Where are we going to go with it? What are we going to work on?
On the hitting side?
Yeah.
So my big thing, probably wouldn't have a lot of time for mechanics. There's a couple things mechanically that we'd work on, probably like finger pressure or something like that. But I think the most important would be strategy. So not once we get mechanics in a good position, we do work on this as we go, kind of concurrently. Yeah. But there's 3 different strategies that we work on. And they could, if your son learned this today and he had a game right after our lesson, he could actually take this into the game. It's not going to be too overwhelming mentally or cognitive. It's not going to create a big cognitive load. Number one are adjusting his verticals. So we call them verticals. Most people know them as launch angles, right? Yeah. So it's the vertical line. We call them verticals because if my hitters are caught saying the words launch angle at practice and the coach hates launch angles, then it puts them in the doghouse. So we camouflage the word and just call it verticals. So what that means is our goal for our hitters is to hit the ball back through the tube, we call it. So the way that looks on a tee, so whatever tee height the ball is, we want the ball coming off the tee the same height. Okay. And in order to do that, what we have to do is if the hitter hits a grounder, hits it below the tube. So the tube in live is just, if you imagine tube coming out, the ball coming, the pitcher delivering the ball through a tube to the catcher, attaches the other side of the tube, and the hitter just hitting it right back through that tube. So if the ball comes in at about chest height, then we want to hit it. It comes off the bat chest height. If it comes in at the knees, we want the ball to come off their bat at the knees. So that's what the tube would be in a live situation. So if a hitter hits a ground ball, our adjustment cue is to hit the ball up next time. If they hit a pop fly, then their adjustment cue is to hit it down or hit a chopper next time. And so the way that works is the brain can think it's so fast. And if that's your goal to hit it back through the tube, your brain goes, okay, I know how to do that. And so it tries to get the barrel there. But the problem is the body carries a bunch of weight with it. And there's a delay to when movement happens, right? When the actual action happens. So you have bone, you got muscle, you got organs, you got fascia, you got all this weight that has to move. So the brain actually has to play a trick on the body. So if I need a hitter, if the hitter's here and I need to get them here, what I get them to feel is way over here. Once I can get them to feel over here, they end up here. It's kind of interesting how it works that way. So it's the same idea with the verticals. So if our goal is right in the center, so we call it fat on fat, fat of the barrel. I learned it from a good friend of mine. Fat of the barrel, fat of the bat, fat on fat. So if we can hit it, fat on fat is our goal. If we're above, we miss, then we're going to try and miss below or get on top next time. If we hit it down, then we're going to try and hit it up next time. And our goal is eventually this up and down vacillation will end up in this zone here. It'll be more of that line drive ratio.
So do you do a lot of tee work? Like, should I put my kid on the tee for 75 swings a day to get him to adjust to where he's actually making that contact?
So what I would do is I would progress him. So I would start, if that's a new concept, right? We start on the tee. We would just do a couple rounds, and our rounds are short. We do 5 swing rounds.
Oh.
We evaluate, and then we do another 5 swing round. We don't do long swing rounds, because think about in the weight room, how do we get a player or how do we get an athlete stronger? So you think about like a 5 times 5, like 5 sets times 5 reps with higher weight, right? 85, 90, 95% of 1 rep max. So baseball and softball are similar type of motions to where we're exploding at a moment's notice. And it's not about endurance per se. I mean, you can argue that for a pitcher, but for a hitter, it's not really about endurance, because they see a pitch every 10 to 20 seconds, depending on how slow the pitcher is, right? Imagine a shot clock in baseball, like it is in basketball. So between pitches, you got about 10 to 20 seconds.
Okay.
And then, the hitter might see 3 balls before they actually get a good pitch to swing at. So it could be a minute before they see something. So we keep our round short, almost like that 5 set, 5 rep type of thing. We keep them short so that they can think and critical think through what they just did and how to make those adjustments. So we try and keep it short on that. So you would do maybe a couple rounds on the tee. Then we do maybe a couple rounds on soft toss of them. Okay. So I would throw that ball to them. And then wherever that contact point is, whatever height it is from the ground, they're going to keep it the same height as they hit it off the bat, as it comes off the bat. And then live, then you'd move to live. If you're just doing work in that concept, right? If you add another layer, say we wanted to work on finger pressure, so we add in another thing we're going to work on, we might come back to the tee for a couple rounds. Then we move to soft toss. Then we move to live toss. So it's really this game of, 1 step back, 1 step forward, another step forward, 1 step back. And we just kind of do this. You know how the learning process is.
Yeah, sure.
But that would be number 1. So we use the tee, but it's only if it's something really new and we know that they're going to be really clunky with it in the beginning. And if I start throwing stuff at them as they're trying to think about, maybe the vertical thing they can probably do, but if we start working on certain mechanical things like neck pressure or downward shoulder angle where they're getting a side bend before they get to the landing position, and I'm throwing to them, they're worried about getting on time, and they're not worried about trying to get that downhill shoulder angle and that kind of stuff. So, we take it slow, up and back. But I would we'd start probably week 1 on verticals. If we had 4 weeks, week 2, we'd work on that concept of hitting the different catcher's gloves that we just talked about. So depth of pitch. So hitting is we call it 3-dimensional. So you have verticals, you have the pitch height, then you have pitch depth, which is you're basically a hitter's line to line approach. Yeah. How do we go oppo? How do we pull the ball? How do we go straight away? Right. Okay. So that'll be the second dimension. We probably work on week 2. That might take a couple weeks because that's just when the barrel enters the zone and our contact points. So, and then I say those are our crosshairs. So if we're shooting a gun, except the crosshairs are dismembered, they're apart, right? Yeah. So we have one that's going this way, we're making adjustments this way, and then we have one that's going this way. And so as we take a swing, they might end up like this. And then I say, you know what, I'm going to work on my vertical and see if I can get it a little bit more centered versus being up here. So I bring that down, and then maybe the horizontal ends up over here. So then once I can line them up, I got fat on fat, I got it going in the right direction. Now we're really working the verticals and the horizontals, which are the when the barrel enters the zone. And then the last one, probably week 4, we'd be working timing as we go too, but timing like the pitch, right? So you have pitch height, pitch depth, and then you have the pitch speed. So that's your timing element. That's the third dimension, right? So then we have a 2-plate drill where we have them say we do a 6-swing round. We have them start on, so the plates are about 3 to 5 feet apart, and I'm throwing from a regular distance. My position doesn't change when I'm throwing, but I have them start at the back plate for 2 swings. They move to the front plate for 2, and then back to the back plate for 2. And then we evaluate, see how they did. And then when we start another round, we start them at 2 swings at the front plate, move to the back plate for 2, and then back to the front plate for 2. Right.
Interesting.
And as we're doing that, when they're at the front plate, we're having them work and hunt middle end pitches. So they're working on that middle in, middle up barrel path. So we're working multiple things, multiple strategies kind of at once. And if they can handle the vertical side, then if they get under a ball, right, they're hunting middle in, but they pop it up. I say, okay, give me a little bit more downswing on that pitch so that they get it back through the tube. So these 3 strategies, even without really touching mechanics in that 4 weeks, I'm telling you, it would be night and day. Those hitters, we'd be just drilling that, and they would be awesome at making adjustments. So
conceptually, you're teaching them how to hit the strike zone. Some people are more into muscle memory and hitting off that tee and hitting off that tee. So they're teaching them how to hit one certain pitch, maybe at the front of the plate or at the back of the plate or pushing it to right field. But essentially, you're teaching them how to hit the strike zone. So they're offering a maximum amount of power no matter where they're hitting it in the strike zone.
Exactly. So think about pattern recognition, right? So what we're trying to do, I mean, hitting is, when we talk mechanics, that's like 20% of the iceberg. There's 80% left. I mean, you're talking about the timing side of it, the strategy that we just talked about. That's a big part of it, is making those adjustments. But there's also pitch recognition, pattern recognition. And so what I'm doing in some of the rounds, so those 3 strategies, we got verticals, we have the horizontals, which is the middle in, middle away, middle up, middle down. We have, I mentioned the timing, but I don't consider that a strategy per se, because we're doing that all the time. It doesn't really matter.
Sure.
We're working mechanics, we're shifting plates. A curveball approach. So we hunt certain curveballs in certain zones. And then the last one is a mix round. So they will hunt a certain pitch, fastball or curveball, and they will hunt that particular pitch in a certain zone. So it could be middle away, middle in, middle up, middle down. And I will say, if a hitter wants to, say if we're getting a hitter ready for like a slow pitcher, most of those slower pitchers, their pattern is they stay away, like middle away fastballs, and their curveballs are like middle down.
Okay.
So when they do a mix round, they're either going to hunt that middle away fastball or that middle down curveball. So they will only swing at those pitches. So what I'm going to do is, as the pitchers, I'm going to try and screw them up, and I'm going to show them different glittery objects. I know they're hunting the middle away fastball, but I'm going to show them a curveball inside. I might show them a curveball away. I might show them a fastball up and in, but they have to ignore it. They are only looking for that pitch. And I tell them, I say, you base your plan off the pitcher. So you're observing the pitcher, you're looking at pattern. The biggest tip off is, if you see a fast pitcher, you may see middle in, you may see middle up more. So then you're going to see a slow pitcher, but you still have to observe. You still have to watch them work against the hitters, right? So you have to observe, you have to critical think. And once you decide, okay, I have a good idea of what the pattern of this guy is, and it could be based off of how he's pitching your teammates. But I have hitters that are doing really, really well right now. They're smashing the ball. They're hot. And in that sense, they can't look at their teammates and how they're being pitched, and that hitter thinking that they're going to be pitched the same way, because they're not. Okay. They're going to be pitched completely backwards, possibly. Instead of getting fastballs away, they're going to get curveballs down in the dirt, and they might get 4 or 5 of them in a row. So what they have to do, it makes their job a little harder, because now they have only really 4 at bats in a game to base what their pattern, what their approach is going to be against that pitcher. So they can only take how they're being pitched to and decide what plan that they're going to go to the plate with. And it could be ahead of the count, this is what this pitcher's doing to me. Behind in the count, this is what this pitcher's doing to me, right? So it flows. But the big thing I want with my hitters, male or female, is I want them to be critical thinkers, and I want them to start looking at patterns. And patterns don't happen just out of the blue. I can start them. I can show them these are some patterns to look for. And then from there, then they can start to see. I tell them the best pattern recognition people are hitters like Mike Trout, Miguel Cabrera, the guys that every single year they're at the top of the MVP race and they're just in and out. They are the best pattern recognition people. They can look at a pitcher and how they're pitching them and they go, okay, I know this guy did this. There's 3 or 4 options of patterns that they're going to show me. And so we're just going to kind of wait and see. We'll go into an at bat and see what pattern shows up. And then that's what I'm going to do. Right. Those guys are really good at pattern recognition. So we can teach it to our hitters, but we have to be like you said, repetition. Yeah. Repetition is the mother of skill for pattern recognition. The more patterns they see, the more they start to recognize, the easier this game gets, irregardless of mechanics. If you know what pitch is coming because of probability, you've been trained for pattern recognition, this game gets so much easier. It's not easy, but it gets easier.
You mean I don't have to bang off the trash can to tell you what's coming?
In the event of Jose Altuve? I know. Hey, I know. And
go ahead.
I was going to say that one quick thought on that. That poor guy. I mean, his mechanics are really good.
Yeah.
Altuve's got really good mechanics. He's got really good power, but that whole thing is going to ruin people are always going to think about that. And that is such a tragedy and a shame.
If we're going to keep a guy like Bonds and McGuire out of the Hall of Fame, I can't give you my tip of a cap for Altuve either then,
Well,
Roger Clemens,
Astros. Why did they even have a championship ring? I think they should have taken it away and not given it to
it's got an asterisk beside it from my perspective. And ironically, my son was playing on a team. I think he was Miner's kids pitch, and the guy who was coaching them, big baseball guy from Houston. So our team name was the Astros. So my son was all in on the Astros, had the Altuve poster, the whole 9 yards. When this happened, when this all went down, the kid just start ripping stuff off the walls. He's like, Dad, no way, man. I'm not into the cheating thing. And
I know.
I'm proud of you for understanding it and making that choice. Hey, what teams have that organizational structure? Does anybody use the same philosophy as you within their organization in MLB?
In the pattern recognition and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a good friend of mine, Perry Husband, and his website's hittingasaguest.com. Great dude. He's been putting this research in for almost 3 decades now. And his system's called effective velocity. So his big application is in pitching with this. So what he does, or what all his research and data talks about, and he's got a hitting side of it too. So we call it the antidote, right? Us hitters, and him and I have talked about this, and he's much more knowledgeable, much more in depth on this stuff. We just I'm probably scratching the surface. Like he talks about in terms of martial arts belts, I'm probably like a green belt in effective velocity when it comes to hitting. He's a black belt. But the idea is that a pitch, it has to do with reaction time. What the ball looks like to a hitter when it's closer to their eyes versus farther away. So what Perry says is that if you were to take a radar gun, a ball that's center of the strike zone, and the radar gun says that's 90 miles an hour. Well, if you take that same ball and you move it up to the up and in zone for like a righty, that radar gun still says 90. But to the hitter, because the ball's closer to their eyes, it looks faster. He says +6. So it doesn't look 90 to the hitter. It actually looks 96. And then if you go, so that's the biggest high note of that system. And then if you take that same 90 and locate it down and away from that righty hitter, it's -6. So it's actually looks 84 to the hitter. So by moving the pitch in different zones, it looks faster or slower. Now, what Perry says is that, and all his you're talking about millions and millions of data points that he's looked at, of the differentials. So if we look at 96 up here and 84 down here, right? That's what 12 degree or 12 miles per hour of a differential.
Yeah.
So Perry says all hard contact happens within a 6 mile an hour differential. So the problem happens is when pitchers start locating their fastball down and in. So if a guy's got a 90 mile an hour fastball, he's making it look 84 now. So he's slowing down his fastest pitch. And then if he takes his curveball that maybe is 80, say it's 80, say it's 80, and he locates it up and in or middle. And what he's doing is he's speeding up his slowest pitch So that 80 looks about 85, 86, maybe even 90 or whatever, but it almost blurs the lines of timing. So a hitter, all he's got to do is he's just got to put his barrel in the right timing of those pitches. And it doesn't matter what the pitch is, he's going to run into barrels, what Perry calls it, running into barrels. He calls the low and away fastball the hanging fastball. So what's interesting about this from a hitter's perspective, so you asked on who's doing this kind of stuff. So the Astros are doing this. Boston's doing this. A lot more teams are doing this. I think the Yankees, Perry's he's got a good handful of teams that he's consulted with that are doing this. A lot of D1 softball, by the way, is doing this. A lot of the top 5, top 10 teams have consulted with Perry, and you're using this in both the pitching and the hitting side. But the great metaphor, football metaphor, you'll love this. So here's the idea from a hitter's perspective. To be able to be on time with both of those pitches is going to be almost impossible. That's why we hunt a certain zone. So what he says is, imagine you have one cornerback covering 2 wide receivers on the same side. And when the pitcher is locating his fastball away and it's slowing it down and he's locating the slow stuff like closer to the hitter, what that's like is those 2 wide receivers running a similar route. So say the end guy closest to the line is running a deep route, and this guy's running a post route, but going in, right? So all the cornerback has to do is read the quarterback, stay in the middle of them, and then just peel off whenever the quarterback looks and throws,
shows
right?
His eyes, yeah.
It makes it easy. It makes it easy for the easier for the cornerback to guard either one of those or cover one of those wide receivers. Makes it really hard though when you have the same lineup. You got both wide receivers on the ends. You got that same cornerback having to guard both, but you got one run a deep route or a deep post, and you got another one that runs a 10-yard cut in, 90-degree cut in. Now that cornerback has to make a decision. He has to decide, okay, do I have the secondary behind me? I have my safeties that can peel off and cover this deep guy so I can cover the guy across the middle? Or should I cover the deep guy because I don't have a safety behind me and let my inside linebacker cover the guy coming over the middle, right? So he has to make a decision on who he's going to go after, who he's going to hunt. So for the hitter, when you have a pitcher, so like Houston, Boston, some of these teams I mentioned, when their pitchers are going up in the zone, and they're going up and in, and then they go with their slow stuff down and away, you can't be on time with both of those pitches. It's almost impossible to do. So you have to hunt one or the other. So it's like that cornerback having to make a decision on who he's going to cover in that sense. So it's happening. There's more of this coming out. It's still, shockingly to me, it's not out with everybody, because I think this is a huge competitive advantage for any team. If they just do the pitching side of it, it's a huge advantage. And then the hitting side, I mean, they almost have to. My hitters, because of the pattern recognition stuff we work on, they deal actually really well with these kind of pitchers.
That's what I was going to say then. Okay, so you decide how you're going to attack, which zone you're going to attack, and then you go to the 4 patterns. You decide which one of those patterns is coming at you, and then you know when it's going to hit that zone, and bang, you're off to the races, right?
Yeah, and good example. So you said, how old was your son?
He's 11.
So I have an 11-year-old hitter who I think he's getting ready to turn 12. He's got one more year Little League. It's crazy because he's smashing the ball right now. Yeah. But the last 8 months since COVID, he's really blossomed. He's really come around. It's really clicked for him. And so here's an example of what happens at that level, 11U, 12U. Is so he'll go into a tournament. Maybe they don't really know him. He'll come in, they'll throw fastballs, and he'll smash them. And then what'll happen is the next time he gets up, because the only way pitchers make adjustments is if you hurt them, right?
Yeah.
So that's absolutely. When you're smashing them, you're hitting it hard, you're hurting them. So then he comes back, and guess what he's seeing next? All curveballs, right? So he had one tournament, he smashed. The next tournament comes back, and they just throwing all curveballs to him. So he played 4 or 5 games. I think he said he only saw 3 fastballs, only 3 the whole time. It was all curveballs. But to his credit, he's got a curveball plan. Like we hunt curveballs too, and we have a strategy in that. So he starts smashing curveballs. He hit one curveball like 250 feet, and I mean he's a bigger kid, but still. And then now what usually happens at that point when their curveball doesn't work, because at that level they don't really have control over it. They just throw it, and it's effective because the hitters don't know how to hit it. They don't have a plan, and so they start pitching around him. He starts getting hit by balls, and he starts racking up walks and hit by pitches.
So let me ask you this question. What do you think of the state of baseball today? In terms, let's go away from what you're training. Let's go to the professional hitter. Let's go to the professional players. We're not seeing a lot of quality batters. Ohtani aside, he's fairly consistent. Trout's out of the game right now because he's hurt. I actually like the Angels a lot. We're big Trout fans in my house.
Yeah.
But why so many struggles with these batters today? What's the problem? I've gotten another guy's take on it who actually is a college baseball coach. What's your take on it?
So I think there's a couple of factors. There's two, I think, that are big. So you got the pitching who's going more towards this effective velocity, or EV, call it EV. So my buddy Perry's stuff, right? So the pitchers start going to that, and that is the antidote to the launch angle swing. So the launch angle swing is get the barrel in the zone early and just swing up. And all you're looking for are dingers and doubles. So what happens is you have a pitch that's coming down in the big leagues at around between 3 and 5 degrees down, right? Okay. And then you have a attack angle, which is the angle the barrel's coming up to the ball, right? You have attack angles that are 15 degrees plus, 15 to 20 degrees plus. So they don't meet. They only meet in one point, right? So you have to be very perfect on a 5 degree, say 95 mile an hour fastball coming down. You have to be very perfect in order with that 15 degree launch angle to be able to hit that ball in the right spot. So that's why you have a lot of swing and misses. You have a lot of strikeouts where they're not blinking at 200 strikeouts a season. I mean, it's not that nobody's getting hurt by that. And they're paying them good money even to do that strikeout because they're going to hit 40 doubles and 40 doubles, 40 homers, or 30 homers, 30 doubles with that. So I think we need to get back to more of matching the plane of the pitch. So you have hitters, like you mentioned, Ohtani, Trout's another decent one. You have Christian Yelich, a lot of the Dodgers, you got your Bellinger's a little loopy. Seager's pretty good about matching the plane of the pitch. You have these guys that are monsters when it comes to fat on fat contact. And those are the guys that will hit 300 every year. They'll hit 30 homers every year. They'll strike out maybe around 100 times, maybe, hopefully less than that. But the days of Joe DiMaggio, where he hits a career 362 homers and strikes out 360 times. I mean, do the math on that, divide that by 18 seasons or 15 or whatever he ended up playing. I think it was like 30 or 40. Oh, shoot, he'd hit 30 homers a year and he'd strike out 30 times. I mean, the days of that, unfortunately, are I think we'll come back to that eventually, but I think that's the big thing. So pitchers are elevating their fastballs more. And then that by consequence with the hitters with this loopiness, they're swinging under pitches a lot.
So the spin rate's out the window, basically.
Yeah.
The whole thing with the spin rate. Now, I did hear, and you're a baseball guy, so you probably heard this. When Theo Epstein took his position in MLB, he said, I think I want to move the mound back a foot, 2 feet to give batters a better chance of catching up with that ball. And what he was saying was that ball's going to come down a little bit better, and then that swoopy swing is going to have more of a chance to drive that thing as opposed to getting as many strikeouts as we are seeing currently.
Yeah. I think that by doing that, it would slow down the velocity. Now, some people say, well, guys are throwing just way harder nowadays. And I think if you take the averages of the velocity, I would agree that probably overall velocity is up today, maybe 3-4 miles an hour, but I don't think it's as much as what people think. And velocity, I mean, high velocity is really not that hard to train. So one of my favorites that people don't give a lot of credit to is Bonds and his training. Bonds, I think, was probably far and above at the time in the early 2000s, even slightly before that, training wise and hitting was far beyond anybody. So one of the drills that he did was, and I've heard Edgar Martinez did this when he's DHing all those times. So he would go down in the clubhouse, in the cage, and he'd have people going down there with tennis balls, racket balls, and he'd be standing probably about 30 feet away hitting from somebody, and they're just rifling balls right by him. So the secret to hitting 100 is to see 110 or to see 120. If you see a ball coming at you at 110 and 120, 100 seems like 80, right?
Yeah,
so
that makes sense.
So Barry Bonds so Edgar Martinez, that's what he would do. Bonds, what he would do is he'd crank the machine up. He'd get to a certain distance, 40 feet, 50 feet, whatever it would be. He'd crank that thing up as fast as it could throw. And then after every swing, he'd take a step forward. He'd swing, he'd take a step forward until he couldn't catch up to it. So things like that. You can train velocity. And I was just doing this with one of my going to be juniors in high school today. We were talking about this same concept. And I said, I was throwing it hard, and we're from anywhere from like 20 to 25 feet or 25 to 30 feet. And and he's got the 2 plates, right? So he's going between them. So when he's at the close plate, boom, that ball's going wham right by him. And we were working on hunting middle up. And so he had to take middle down. So I threw one, I hummed one hard, went middle down, and he swung at it, swung right over it. And I said, oh, you weren't supposed to swing. He goes, I know, but that's so fast. He goes, because he was so close to me, you know? And I said, here's the thing. I said, if we did this all day, like if we just took our whole hour and 15 minutes and I was throwing it hard. Eventually what you're going to see, pattern recognition, is you're going to see when I release, when the ball's up in the zone, you're going to see a pattern emerge about where I release. Versus when the ball ends up down, you're going to see me release differently. So even at that high speed, because our eyes are really quick to take information and to filter it. They're really good at that, but you have to train them at high speeds.
We're looking at all fingers.
Yep.
Basically, we're looking at all fingers.
All fingers and shapes of the arm, right? The shape that the arm's making, because a curveball can look like this, doing 12 to 6. You know, and a fastball is going to be more in that 3/4 delivery. So we're looking at multiple things, but yeah, like shape of the hand, you know, this is more curveball because they got to come this way. We call it skinny wrist versus fat wrist, more the fastball. They got to stay behind it when they throw it. Yeah. So there's a lot of cool stuff.
What's the game different today than when you played? Because I know you said you've learned so much basically since you were in the game as a player. How has it changed?
Yeah, I think it's changed quite a bit. One, that launch angle thing, because I was on my way out so my last year was 2003, and that was just starting to come in. So that was when Moneyball came out. So I read Moneyball, I think in 2001 or 2002. Movie came out probably 5-10 years later. And the A's were already starting to recruit guys with that launch angle swing, with that swing that was attacking balls down in the zone. And at the time, pitchers were targeting down in the zone. So now what's changed big time in the last maybe 5, maybe 10 years, but 5 years definitely, is that pitchers are starting to elevate the ball.
Okay.
We weren't seeing that a lot in college. I wasn't seeing a lot of elevation. We saw it, but not the hard stuff. Like the hard stuff was still away. It was still down in the zone, down and away. And for me, to my discredit, is that I was taught down and through. I was taught to swing down and to swing through the ball. That's a great approach to middle in, middle up in the zone, but it's not a very consistent approach for middle away, middle down. And I could hit the ball hard. I could go out to right center field, but my strikeouts absolutely ballooned when I got to college because the pitchers got better at being able to pinpoint. And because I was being taught that down and through, and I didn't know to get that barrel in the zone earlier and to make contact deeper on that middle away, middle down pitch, that I had to be like really precise, just like these hitters now with seeing 5 degrees down and they got this 15-degree attack angle that they're trying to get to the ball. So I would say elevation of fastball has been a big change. And just that one change, Jacob deGrom, this is Perry Husband told me this. So 1 year, I think his ERA, I don't know if it was his freshman year or his sophomore year, his ERA was like 4, something in the middle of 4.5, 4.2, something. The one change he made the next year was elevating his fastball. So he went from 30% elevated fastball to over 50%. So over 50% of his fastballs were elevated. His ERA dropped to like 2.2 just by elevating the fastball. So it's a big deal.
I watched him the other night pitch against, I think it was Atlanta. I'm pretty sure I was watching his Atlanta game. They pounded him for 3 runs first inning. He was pissed when he gave up a run in the first inning. He came back the next 7 innings. He was unhittable. Like, he is pitching lights out this year. I mean, I know he's always had that potential. He's always had consistency, but man, he's just fun to watch.
When you're watching games now, watch where they locate their pitches. So watch where the fastballs are located and watch where their slow stuff's located. It's going to be interesting. You're going to see the pitchers that are more effective are going hard up, hard in, and are going soft down, soft away.
What's next for Joey Meyer? Long-term goals.
So long-term goals is we're moving. We learned a lot on the marketing side of things in the baseball softball niche. And so we're taking that into the the business niche, but more specific businesses that we're looking for. So we're doing a lot in the realm of search engine optimization and helping businesses in the trades and real estate, different stuff like that. So we're taking the different things, the skills that we learned on the marketing side of things, and we're moving it into the business side. And, I love baseball. I had $100 million in the bank. This is what I would do, baseball, softball. So I'm still going to put out books. I'm still going to do the different things associated with baseball just because I love it. And it's hard to get the coach out of the coach,
Yeah. Tell us how we can stay in touch with you. Talk about your website, your social media. How can we stay in the fold with Joey Myers?
Yes, sir. Yeah. Thank you. So hittingperformancelab.com is for those baseball, softball folks. And you can just go there. If you're interested in information, you can scroll down and there's a lot of different, like the best of posts that we have based on our traffic and things like that. There's the newer posts, blog posts that we've done. There are also, if you're interested in taking the next step and learning about the hitting, we have a bunch of online video courses. So as you land on Hitting Performance Lab, there's a take a quiz because we have like 9 or 10 different courses. And that quiz will help to filter what course will be right for you. So you could be an amateur, maybe parent out there just starting in the coaching side of things that wants to work with their own child on hitting or whatnot. And then that quiz will help filter you into the right courses of what your needs are. So on social media, you can just search Hitting Performance Lab. You can search on Google where we show up quite a at the top. And then Joey Myers on LinkedIn if you're a business professional and you want to make that commitment there. But Amazon, we got books. Catapult Loading System was an Amazon bestseller, January 2018. And then our newest book is Swing Smarter. Still learning since it's new. Swing Smarter, science-based hitting training built to understand the how, the why, and the reasoning behind it. So that's really what we got going on right now, Mark.
That's excellent. Hey, I can't let you walk away without me having you involved in my final segment. We just got to know, you being the hitting guru you are, who's your Mount Rushmore professional hitters? Give me your top 5.
Mark, I was anticipating. I was waiting for this one. So my top 5, I have to go with, because Catapult Loading System, the Amazon best-selling book that I talked about, the subtitle to that was How to Teach 100-Pound Hitters to Consistently Drive the Ball 300 Feet. So baseball players, 100-pound hitters, 300 feet. So 3 times the distance. We were able to do that. So when I say that weight or body mass doesn't really make a big difference, arm length, leg length does. So I got to, on Mount Rushmore, I got to pick guys that are small guys, small sluggers. Aside from all the cheating stuff, I still got to put Altuve up there. Take the cheating out of it.
Fair enough, man. I couldn't.
But he's a small guy, and he crushes, right?
Yeah.
Moral, ethically, maybe not so much, but I gotta have him in there. Saduhara O, do you know that name?
Oh, absolutely.
Yep, Saduhara O. For those that don't know, the Babe Ruth of Japanese baseball, 868 homers in 18 years, or something like 40 something homers a year, and he was only 5'10", 173 pounds.
He weighed that much?
173 pounds. He was a big samurai guy. That's how he trained, right?
Yeah.
Got Saduhara O, Jose Altuve, Hank Aaron, obviously 6 foot. What was he? 180 pounds, something like that.
Yeah.
Hank Aaron. And then you got some of the guys nowadays. I would say, McCutcheon in his prime with the Pirates. That he 5'10", 100 something pounds, 180 pounds, 190 pounds, and the other guy, McCutcheon, and one of my favorites. He's not with the A's anymore. That's my team, but Chris Davis. So Chris Davis of the A's, not Chris Davis of the Orioles. So Chris Davis of the A's, KHRIS, right? Davis.
I knew I was going to say that.
Guy is ridiculous. 5'10", 190 pounds or 200 pounds, 205 pounds, whatever it is. But got to have those guys on because you can't say they're just big. They just do that because they're big, because they're not big. Right. they're gifted. They're
Justin
all gifted
Pedroia?
in the big leagues. Oh, yeah. Pedroia is another one. He didn't hit a lot of homers, but I know he could. Even who's the other guy? Just retired from ball. Japanese.
Brock Holt?
No. Mariners. Just retired. What's his name?
Jesus. I can't believe we can't think of his name.
I know. Lefty, slap. Slap around. But I'll think about it. But during BP, they say that he could put on a home run show.
I can see his face plain as day. And
I know. Yeah. Has a rocket for an arm. But that's another one. And I don't know how tall he was. I don't think he was and he was very skinny. but he wasn't a big dude. He wasn't a Aaron Judge or a Giancarlo Stanton.
We used to make the trip into Baltimore when he come over to Baltimore and play with Seattle. I can't believe I'm forgetting his name.
I know. But he's definitely up there too, for sure.
Fantastic baseball player.
Yeah, fantastic.
Hey, thanks, Joey. You guys can catch Joey Myers, as he said, on Hitting Performance Lab. You can find him on Google. He's on social media. I really appreciate all the insight on baseball. Talk a little bit about your career, and we look forward to reading more and hearing big things about the Hitting Performance Lab.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for your time, brother. It was a pleasure. It's always good to get two coaches talking. We could probably do for hours.
Oh, we could have been here forever. I love baseball. Take care.
Thank you.
So sit right back. We're going to tell you a story of heroes and warriors who played for the glory. They're about to see it in your stadium chair. We know all your teams and we can go on for days. It's game time from the original. Highlights and playoffs and very special guests. It's game time on the original Sportscast show by the best.